1 million years ago, in the towering heart of ancient mountains, life clung precariously to rock and ice. High in the cold peaks, a small clan carved out a meager existence, forever on the edge of the world. Their days were a relentless battle against hunger, cold, and the vast, indifferent power of the mountains. Especially vulnerable were the young. Every new day was a struggle for the sustenance they so desperately needed.
The mountains yielded little. Every root, every berry was a hard-won victory in a land of scarcity.
But high above, a different kind of hunter reigned. A winged titan, undisputed master of the mountain skies. It returned to its fortress. A solitary, jagged spire, a natural stronghold against all earthly threats. And upon its peak, a prize beyond measure, a massive nest holding the promise of life.
A desperate gamble. A mountain of rock, a fortress of a bird. The plan was insane. A climb into the heavens, a raid on the nest of a god.
Their tools were primitive, but their skill, born of necessity, was honed to perfection. Their lives would depend on these fragile threads. Each knot a prayer, each braid a promise against the void. A sharpened spear, their only defense against the talons and beak of a godlike beast. A desperate hope, and for the prize, a carefully crafted vessel. Fragile life, protected in a web of woven hope. From below, a silent guardian. His arrow, a single, swift prayer against the overwhelming might of the sky. Before dawn, they stood at the foot of the impossible. A vertical world of rock and sky, challenging their very existence. The rock face rose, a silent, unyielding giant. Every handhold a gamble, every shadow a potential trap. They sought a path, not with maps, but with instinct, reading the ancient language of the rock, searching for a way up. The giant departed. A silent signal, a window of opportunity, precarious and fleeting.
The climb of their lives. A gamble against gravity, against time, against the wrath of a god.
The first climber, the most agile of the clan, began the ascent. A lone figure against the stone. Every handhold was a question of trust. Every foothold, a prayer against the unforgiving rock. The mountain shed its skin, a constant, careless threat, a reminder that gravity was their greatest enemy. He reached the first ledge, his heart pounding. The first link in the chain to the sky was forged. The second followed, their precious gear in tow. His trust was not in the rock, but in the rope.
The leader ascended last, the anchor of their small expedition, her strength a foundation for their hope.
On their first perch, the world below had already shrunk away. They were intruders in the vertical world. But the spire still loomed above, a cruel joke of nature. Their journey had barely begun. The leader of the climb began again, pushing ever higher into the thin, cold air of the mountain. 3 fragile lives, a single thread of hope, stretched thin against an impossible wall of stone. Higher they climbed, into a world of thin air and dizzying emptiness, the ground a forgotten memory. Here, the wind was a physical enemy, a powerful, invisible hand trying to tear them from the mountain. The leader knew the sky itself was becoming their foe, its power growing with every foot they gained. Every movement was a battle, a test of will against the combined forces of gravity and the angry wind.
And the rock was not dead. It was alive with its own creatures, its own territorial and venomous guardians.
A near-fatal surprise. A reminder that in this world, death did not always come on great wings.
And then, they saw it, a circling speck on the horizon. The owner of the nest was still at work.
The sight of the distant eagle ignited a new fire in them. Their window of time was closing, and fast.
Fear gave way to frantic speed. They raced against the return of the mountain's king. After hours of struggle, they arrived, the final ledge, just below the eagle's nest. The prize was within reach. They had arrived at the top of the world, exhausted, trembling, staring into the heart of the beast's lair.
The nest was a monument to a giant, woven from the bones of its victims. And in its center, the prize.
One stood guard against the sky, while the others prepared to commit the ultimate trespass. Every movement was a whisper. Every shifted branch, a potential death sentence, a sound that could echo for miles. Inside the eyrie, the scale was humbling, a cradle large enough to hold a grown man, and eggs of impossible size. Greed had no place here. They would take only what they needed to survive, a single, precious treasure. With the delicate touch of a mother, they secured their prize, the future of their clan, in its woven basket.
And then, the sound they had been dreading. The cry of the Mountain King, returning to its throne.
Their careful, silent raid now became a frantic scramble. The time for stealth was over. The time for speed had begun. They looked to the sky and saw their doom approaching.
It came upon them like a thunderclap, a storm of feathers and fury, its shadow swallowing the sky.
There was no escape, no retreat, only the cold, hard stone at their backs and the approaching god of the mountain.
The first pass was a hurricane of wind and talons, designed to sweep them into the void. The rock screamed under the blow, a near miss, and a terrifying promise of what was to come.
Its shriek of rage echoed through the peaks. This was no longer a hunt. It was a battle for its home, its young. The leaders saw their only chance. Not in fighting, but in hiding. In becoming a smaller, more difficult target.
A desperate scramble for cover, their precious prize now a terrible, fragile burden in the heat of battle. As the beast descended again, they met its attack not with fear, but with the sharpened points of their spears.
A blow is landed. A single point of pain against the Titan. A message that these creatures would not die easily.
But the eagle was intelligent. It changed its tactic, claiming the high ground, turning their path of retreat into a cage. The Titan surveyed its territory, its wrath a palpable force. They were trapped between stone and fury.
They were cornered. A desperate choice loomed. Face the monster above, or gamble on a perilous descent. The leader quickly formulated a new strategy. A desperate retreat, covered by the spears of defiance.
The most vulnerable member, carrying their most fragile hope, began the perilous journey down, into the void. The two remaining stood as bait, their bodies shields, their spears defiant challenges to the soaring beast. The eagle's wrath was unyielding. It plunged from above, a feathered spear of fury, focused on the defiant two. Again, they met its charge, a desperate dance of defiance against crushing power. They would not break.
Below, the egg-bearer descended, racing against the screams, against the furious beat of giant wings. The eagle's cunning shifted. If it could not have their lives, it would have its child back. It would reclaim its prize.
The eagle swooped, a shadow of death descending on the exposed climber, talons outstretched for its lost child. Exposed and alone, the climber faced the full, diving wrath of the mountain's king. There was no defense. From above, his companions could only watch in helpless horror, their spears useless, their courage not enough.
But the clan had one last weapon. A silent guardian on the ground, waiting for his one perfect moment.
A single breath, a steady hand, the hopes of the entire clan resting on the tip of a single arrow. The small, feathered stick flew, a defiant prayer sent up from the earth to challenge the fury of the sky. The arrow finds its mark. A new pain from a direction the eagle never expected. Its perfect attack shattered by an impossible sting from below, the great bird's confidence was finally broken. Given a final, miraculous chance, the climber abandoned all caution, a desperate slide towards the safety of the earth. He landed, battered and terrified, but alive. The prize was safe. They had done the impossible. The eagle was gone, but the mountain remained. Their victory was only half won. The descent was yet to come. The journey down, in many ways, was more perilous than the climb. Gravity, a constant, patient enemy. With the same slow, deliberate care that took them up, they began their retreat back to the world of the ground. Every rappel was a test of the vine's strength, a prayer that their primitive knots would hold true. The leader took the greatest risk, ensuring their only lifeline, the rope, could be used for the next perilous drop.
For a moment, they paused and saw the world not as an enemy, but as a place of breathtaking, terrible beauty.
The sight of their waiting companions below, a beacon of safety, a promise that the ordeal was almost over.
The last foot touches the ground. The vertical world is left behind. They are creatures of the earth once more. Reunited. Battered, exhausted, but together. The journey back was heavy, not just with their prize, but with the weight of their exhaustion and their triumph.
One single egg, a treasure of impossible size, a concentrated sun holding the promise of life within its fragile shell.
The lookout's cry was not one of warning, but of joy, a signal that the hunters...
A wave of relief and jubilation washed over the clan. The desperate gamble.
The leader embraced her child. For this small, warm life, she had challenged a god and conquered a mountain. The clan gathered around the prize, their hands reaching out to touch the smooth, impossible shell. It was real. That night, the fire roared with celebration. The gnawing fear of hunger was replaced by the certainty of a feast. In the eyes of a starving child, the egg was not just food. It was a miracle. It was the future. With a ceremonial strike, the shell was broken, releasing the bounty that they had risked everything to win. A river of gold. A feast of life. A single egg, large enough to... The feast was a celebration of life itself. A communal meal that banished the ghosts of starvation and despair. With every bite, strength returned. The color came back to their cheeks, the light back to their eyes. Even the remnants of their prize were a treasure. The shell, a symbol of their victory, became a useful tool. In the days that followed, the clan was reborn. No longer a band of starving survivors, but a strong and healthy tribe. But their triumph was written in scars, a permanent reminder of the price of their children's future. The spoils of their enemy became their new strength. The eagle's feather, once a symbol of terror, now guided their arrows. They turned the image of their greatest fee into a totem of their greatest victory, a ward against the sky. She looked at the empty nest, a silent monument to their audacity, their courage, and their desperation. The sky was not empty for long. Nature always finds a way. She saw her clan, healthy and safe, and knew the terrible risk had been worth it. The future was secure. In a world of giants, of monsters, and of gods, the greatest mountains to be climbed were not of stone. They were mountains of fear, of desperation, and of doubt. Barriers that existed within the heart. And they could only be conquered by a force more powerful than gravity. the unyielding strength of courage. A courage born not of recklessness, but of a leader's love for her clan and her refusal to surrender. For the young, for the future, for the continuation of their small, fragile flame of life. To face a god is to risk annihilation, but to succeed is to claim a piece of that power as your own.
The scars of the battle fade, but the story remains. A legend.
This is how a people are forged, not in times of peace, but in the fires of impossible trials. They had learned to look up, not with fear of the sky, but with the confidence of those who had touched it. And so, their small light burned, a defiant star in the mountain's darkness. Their story, like their light, was a small but brilliant defiance against an overwhelming darkness. A story of a single clan, repeated 1,000 times, in 1,000 different mountains, across 1,000,000 years.
The eagle still soars, a symbol of the wild, untamable beauty of the world.
And the descendants of the clan still climb, driven by that same ancient, human need to reach for the sky. The mountains remain, silent witnesses to the endless struggle and the improbable victory of life. For in a world of fang and claw, of rock and ice, the most powerful force was always the same: the courage to risk everything for the survival of the clan.
And the ingenuity to build a ladder to the stars.